Hey, good morning, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the show. It is episode 333, September 21st, 2022, and I'm joined once again by Kyle Klingman in Cedar City, Iowa. We're hot off the World Championships, Kyle. It's been a good time watching all these different styles compete. Wouldn't you say? I agree, and it was fun, right? A lot of medals among men's freestyle, women's freestyle, and of course history. Jordan Burroughs, and a lot of people are looking at that history number 7, but history in the women's division too. Kyle, set us up. Yeah, blown away. She's amazing. Let's bring her on. Amit, welcome to the show. Congrats on all the success, and thanks for joining us today. Yeah, and we do want to, like I said, we want to get into all the success, but we kind of want to hear the backstory, right? We know she's winning world titles, she's crushing people. Where'd she come from? How did she get here? How'd you get introduced to wrestling? How old were you, and what do you remember about your early memories within the sport?
So it's been a long journey. I first started wrestling when I was 4 years old. My brother wrestled in high school, and so did my sister. And I would always go watch them with my mom, and I would just beg her to go on the mats. And at that time, they only let kids start wrestling at 5 years old. And she was like, you know what? If you really want, go ask the head coach if you can wrestle. And I was so nervous. I was pretty shy when I was little. But I went out there and I asked, can I please start wrestling? And they're like, I don't know, maybe. Okay, you can give it a shot. And so I went to that first practice and I immediately fell in love. Like just something about the mats, like it just like excited me, and getting to, like physically move people around. It's just like it just came to me naturally. I didn't, I didn't do so well when I was younger. I was losing tournaments and stuff. But I feel like as I got older, I started to get stronger, get in better shape. And then I started to really enjoy wrestling, and I was like, wow, maybe I'm good at this. And so yeah, and then I did judo eventually too. I started judo when I was 7. I did judo for a few years, and then eventually I found my way back to wrestling. And I was like, you know what, wrestling is my number one sport. I love this so much.
Cool. Judo, wrestling. I think you have maybe a little jujitsu background too, but they're all similar, right? They're hand to hand combat type sports. I don't know how did you get into judo, and what was that experience like?
Yeah, so I started wrestling at this community youth center that had many different sports. And so my mom would just drop me off after school and I would just spend my day there. So I did many different sports. I would do like wrestling, gymnastics, literally any sort of class they had available. And so they had judo there. And I loved throwing people. That was like my favorite thing. And so I got really into judo. I had a lot of fun. But eventually our instructor left, and so I kind of found my way back to wrestling. And then I think I decided that I like wrestling better than judo just because there's more you can do in wrestling. You can't touch the legs in judo. And I just feel like all the scrambling, all the different positions you can work on in wrestling, it's just so much more fun for me.
Uh huh.
Um, so yeah.
Sure. And you said you grew up, and I think you said you had an older brother and sister who were into wrestling. Um, like before you got onto the mats, were you like enjoying watching it and thinking about what it would be like if you could do it yourself?
Yes, exactly. Like it was killing me to watch them. I was like, please let me join you. And then any chance I had, I would wrestle with my older brother and sister, even though they were probably like 3 times my size. They were
Uh huh.
both heavyweights. But I enjoyed like just tackling people like, oh, like I just had so much what's the word? Like uh
Energy,
aggression, you know? So
aggression. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So it sounds like you
So
were very inclined physically, right? You like to wrestle, like and you're wrestling at home with your brother and sister. And I had older brothers and I guess older sister, but my older brothers wrestled, and I was like into it. So I feel like that kind of not being picked on necessarily, just being very physical at a younger age, like steered you into that direction. And you said when you stepped on the mat, you loved it. Did judo for a couple years. I think you said 7 years old. You came back to wrestling. Um,
oh,
when did you?
I
Yeah, go ahead.
I went to judo at 7, but I
Oh,
went
okay.
back to wrestling at around 10 and 11. So I had about 3 years of judo.
All right. Um,
Yeah.
when would you say, and maybe it was before judo, maybe it was after, when did you like fall in love with wrestling or really develop a passion and it was like, man, this is what I want to do?
I would say when I was 14, because it went from being more of a hobby to like a profession, like bigger goals. Like there were nationals, and then the idea of world championships came around and international competitions. And it's just it went from these local tournaments to something that was so much bigger. And that's when I started to really love it, and getting to meet and wrestle people from all around the world is amazing. And yeah, it's just like the more wrestling I learned, the more I learned to appreciate it. Just like the different combinations of technique, different things, and just realizing that there is so much to learn in wrestling. It's never ending.
Yeah,
And I think that drives me every day in practice. Oh, I want to learn this, I want to learn that. Show me, please. So yeah.
sure. And we know the success you've had in recent years. Were you having the success at, I guess we'll just start when you came back from judo at 10, 11, and you really, your passion, I think you said at 14, like, were you having success maybe on the local level at those younger ages?
So I would say before judo, I was losing pretty consistently, but after judo, I came in, I was doing pretty well. I was wrestling only boys at that time because there weren't that many girls tournaments. I was also a heavyweight when I was younger. I just kind of grew up fast and stayed this weight. So I was wrestling boys, and it was a lot of fun, and I was actually winning a lot of boys tournaments when I was younger. And I think it's because the judo helped me. I was trying to throw people, do all these upper body attacks. And honestly, to this day, I still do that. I still stick to my roots and what I was doing when I was younger. But eventually in middle school, there's so many more opportunities to wrestle girls, and then I kind of shifted to girls wrestling, and that was amazing. And today, the difference between how many girls there are on the mats compared to when I was in middle school is crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's fantastic. It's exploding. I know Kyle's a huge fan, and I think it's fantastic. I got a couple little girls, and I hope they wrestle really badly. I actually don't want them to know how badly I want them to wrestle. But you're talking about transitioning or seeing the bigger picture, right? National tournaments or international tournaments. What was your coaching situation like at a younger age? Because I know you got Valentine and probably a slew of coaches that are plugged in, tuned into the bigger picture. But how did you kind of get your eyes opened up to the world beyond maybe where you lived and the state or the country or the globe?
Yeah. So when I was younger, I had many different coaches. I would go every week to a different club, a different place. And this was really thanks to my mom, and my brother and my sister kind of pushing me and giving me the opportunity to get to train at many different places. And then, through connections, through coaches, they're like, oh, hey, Amit, if you want to go to this practice at this other club, you can. And so when I was younger, I never really had one club. I would train everywhere, wherever they would accept me. And it was, I think it was pretty cool because I got to hear, and learn from coaches with many different styles and
Yeah,
many different teaching styles. Um, and so, but that's part of the reason why when I started working with Valentine, I was so excited because finally I had, one personal coach instead of, many, many different coaches that didn't really work with me like very close. So yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
And you said I would go to lots of different clubs and wherever they would accept me. Were there ever places where they didn't accept you? Because either because you were a girl or for and maybe any other reason?
So everywhere they would accept me, but there are some places that I wouldn't feel very comfortable. I wouldn't feel like they want me there.
Uh-huh.
Just like kind of like little things from the coaches, like just pushing me to the side, or sometimes I would be partnered up with boys when I was younger, and just because of my experience in judo and natural strength, I was beating up on them a little bit. And I think it irritated the coaches, and they would get really mad at me and they would say, Amit, you can't wrestle them like that. You need to go lighter. And I would be like, what do you want me to do? This is practice. I want to
Yeah.
get better, you know? And so, like, and I asked to wrestle with boys that were a little bit older than me too, and they wouldn't let me. So I tried to find other clubs that I felt more accepted, I felt more comfortable. And honestly, like right now, everywhere I go, it's girls wrestling has grown so much that I feel so much more comfortable than I did back then.
Do you feel that they were almost trying to like protect? I don't know if protect's the right word. Not physically. Well, maybe physically because you're beating them up, but like protect their egos or their, not even that's the right thing to do. But do you think they're trying to? They don't want to see these boys get beat up by this girl.
I mean, I hope not. I hope that they had other reasons, like maybe they don't want me to injure them or something like that. I mean, I would never want to injure anybody,
Of
but
course.
yeah, I honestly I don't know where they came from with that. But it's not a good feeling, being pushed to the side, always going with one partner, or even the partners themselves, the boys I was working with, a lot of them didn't want to go with me. And also when I was younger, just in school in general, when I had friends and I would say, "Oh, I'm a wrestler," and they would say, "You're a wrestler? What? You just like wrestle people? That's so weird." So and to see how it's changed right now, like how girls wrestling is so much more well known, it feels amazing to see that right now.
Yeah, it's blowing up. It is exploding. So so when and how did you meet Valentine? We all know Valentine. Oh, I don't know if we all do, but Valentine Kalika, he's a very successful coach and he's coached a lot of great wrestlers.
hmm so I met him first when I was 12 years old, and it's kind of funny story. I saw a USA Wrestling article about Elena Perskova. She's a world
Yeah.
champion, and I saw that he's her coach, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. And in the article they were talking about how he's such a good personal coach and how he kind of like knows how to adjust his style for his athletes qualities and things like that.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I previously, when I was like 10 and 11, I was spending a lot of time in Israel visiting family. And I would wrestle in the club there. And there was this Russian coach that I really liked. And so I was like, oh, Valentine, he's like Russian, Ukrainian coach, kind of like the same coaching style. And so I got really excited and I was like, oh, that's so cool. And then at one point, one of my friends that I was on a boys wrestling dual team with said that he was working with him. And then he gave Valentine's number to my mom. And then they talked, and Valentine was like, okay, you can come over. I'm training on the beach in Southern California. Bring a meet over. And so my mom and I drove to Southern California from California Bay Area, and we spent a week there training with Valentine. And this was in 2019 before the Rio Olympics. So it was really cool because I got to see how he was preparing his athletes for the Olympics. And it was, I was so nervous during that week. It was like crazy just being around an Olympic coach. And I felt like, oh, I have to perform. I have to show how good I am. But yeah, that was the first time I met him. And then we kind of stayed in touch and trained a little bit here and there. I would come over. But then when I was 14, I went and I seriously trained in New York City with Valentine. And since then, we've been working a lot together consistently.
Sure. What? Because I know Valentine and his story a little bit. Like, what was that training like in Southern California? Because I've seen him like doing pull-ups on trees and like just like old school Rocky workouts.
Yeah. He's crazy. I heard him say that you can train anywhere, and the best thing is to do it outside in the fresh air in the nature. And so we would do all sorts of things. We had a lot of bands, and
Uh
so
huh.
we would take like, we would put the bands around our waist and we would do shots. He calls it a bungee, and then we would do like snap downs with the bands. And then we would throw rocks over our heads. We would run on the sand, hand fight, and then we would also kind of like go to a place on the sand where there's like a little bit of a hill, and then we would pretend to fall over and catch ourselves to kind of like train our hips, and like in a wrestling match, like you lose your balance
Yeah.
and you need to get into good position. So it's kind of like that. And the sand is really helpful because it's always moving on you. So you need to have like it trains your stability very well. So I really believe in beach workouts. That's like one of my favorite things.
That's cool. I've seen the bands and throwing rocks, and that's all seems pretty normal. The falling down the hill and catching yourself, that's really cool. I never even thought I mean, how do you train balance? I guess just by wrestling. But no, that's like an actual concrete way to train your balance. What were your thoughts as you did these unique type of training methods?
Well, I would always have a headache after. Like, it was really working my mind. All of these like different things that I've never done before, until I met Valentine. But generally, I really believe in all the different training he has had me do.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just a blast. There's always something interesting and different with Valentine for sure.
Okay. Uh, as you're coming through, because '04 was the first, time women were allowed in the Olympics, so probably most of your life. Um, when did you start paying attention to the Olympics? Were there women that were wrestling at or near the top that you looked up to as a young girl?
Yeah, so around when I was like 10 years old, I feel like that's when I started to really become obsessed with the Olympics. It was partly because of judo. My coach there, he was awesome, and he was always talking about the Olympics. He was like, Amit, you don't understand. I think you can go to Olympics one day. And I was like, what? No, there's no way. And he's like, yeah, just keep training. So yeah, that coach is amazing. But then since then, I've just been obsessed with it. I was like, I'm gonna try to go to Olympics one day. Like that is my number one dream. And so yeah, that was my goal. And I'm trying to think people I was looking up to. Definitely Elena Piriskova. I really felt like a connection to her, and
Yeah.
she's a world champion. Um, and as I got older, Helen Mariulis, first Olympic champion, and I got to meet her right before the Olympics too. So it was just incredible to see her win. And definitely out of everybody, my older sister too, because she was on the mat way before me when there were no girls at all. A heavyweight also, always wrestling the heavyweight boys. And so I would watch her, and when I'd see her, I would know girls can wrestle. Look at my sister. If she can do that, I can do anything. Um, so yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So your coach, your I think it was your judo coach, you said you could be in the Olympics one day. Yeah, that seems far fetched.
Yeah.
I guess the question is going to be like when did you believe maybe that there was a shot? But maybe a similar question is when did you get introduced to the age level, cadets and this and that, and start believing that is something that you could compete in and maybe have success in?
So I remember I was 14 and some coaches were telling me, oh, I mean, I think there's this national tournament called Body Bar, or at least used to be called Body
Yeah,
Bar.
yeah.
And I was in the schoolgirl division, so I think that's 13 and 14. And they're like, if you win Body Bar as a schoolgirl, you get to go to the Pan American Championships. And I was like, whoa, wrestling people who aren't from the US? Like that's the coolest thing ever. And so my mom and I flew to Texas, and I wrestled in the schoolgirl division, my first like official big girls tournament.
Yeah.
Uh, and there were so many girls there. Like it was just
Huge.
crazy. So different to what I'm used to being in those boys tournaments and like walking around the only girl. And so yeah, we went to Pan Am's that year. It was in Mexico. I think this place called Villa Hermosa. I don't know if I'm saying that right.
Sure. We'll say you are.
And it was so fun. Like it's just such every time you go to international competition, it is always such a different vibe to what you're used to in the US. And it's just incredible. There were so many people cheering in other languages. And I was really nervous, obviously, but I enjoyed every second of it.
Yeah, and Kyle's been to a bunch of international events, and I have too. And yeah, it's awesome, and it's different, and it's cool seeing from the wrestling perspective and just the culture perspective, maybe culture through wrestling, it doesn't, you talked about, I was always the only girl at these boys tournaments. And then you probably went to Body Bar and it felt different. But this is like a whole kind of different. One, what did you like or dislike about that? And two, how did you do at that event?
Body bar?
No, I'm sorry. I might have confused you. Pan Am's, being at your first international event.
Oh, Pan Am's.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was surprised I only had one girl in my division from Mexico, and it was a small competition, but I think that was a good thing for me because it was my very first one, so it's a great way to prepare for future international competitions. Um, but it was different than anything I've ever done before. It was, with girls from Mexico and all sorts of like South American countries with different cultures. And just, I still remember warming up in that arena there and how nervous I was. And then after my match, I was like, oh, I did it. I did it. I wrestled somebody from another country. And then after that, it was just, everything else was the same, international competitions.
Yeah. What was your first world championship? Where was your first world championships at? Cadets, I presume.
My first world championships was in 2019 in Sofia, Bulgaria. The same place that I just had junior worlds this year.
Oh, cool. And from the experience, and all that to the wrestling, what do you remember about that?
So in my first cadet worlds, leading up to it, I was very like I was nervous. I was excited, but I was more nervous than I've ever been before. Um, and when I got there, I really didn't know what to expect because I saw other girls before me at cadet worlds. And I saw the pictures and I was like, whoa, it's like a different world, like you see the arena behind you and the UWW, like the fancy elevated mats. And I was just so nervous about it. And when you're nervous about something, there's nothing much you can do. You just have to go along and do it anyways, even while you're nervous.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. And I had a really close match in the semifinals there in 2019. And I lost. And I think that was like one of the best things that has ever happened to me. I feel like every time you lose, it's a good thing. And if you win, it's a good thing too. But that loss has helped me so much. Just thinking about, oh, what if in those last 30 seconds when I was losing, what if I tried this? What if I was more composed? And then I think about it in practice and I kind of like I have a simulation almost, we're wrestling live in practice and I'm like having flashbacks to that match and I'm like, okay, you're gonna get the shot, you're gonna get the takedown, you're gonna get something. You have to score. So it's really helped motivate me that loss I had in 2019.
Sure. And you're talking about recalling and thinking and have these simulations in your mind. It sounds like you think, which is good and important, about wrestling a lot because the physical is really important, but like the mental understanding positions and probably thinking through things is really important. Outside of practice or any physical training, how much do you think about wrestling throughout the day? And specifically, like, what are you thinking? Are you thinking getting your hand raised? Are you thinking scenarios, tactics, techniques? Kind of, I like to get inside the head of successful wrestlers and see what and how and maybe why they think what they think.
Yeah. I don't know where it comes from in my mind, but I'll suddenly have usually it's like almost like flashbacks to previous matches or previous situations in practice that I was wrestling, and I can almost envision it mentally, kind of like the movements and the feelings. And I kind of like think, okay, wait, what if my opponent did that? That's how I'm gonna react. And I find myself thinking about it at least a few times a day. Just the actual movements, and then something else I think about too is the feelings I have before a match, the stress, the adrenaline that I get, and how I manage it. And that's pretty complicated for me. Like I go from like being pretty calm and relaxed, like you can wrestle, and then a few seconds later I'm like, okay, you can't let them do this. You have to do that. You have to, and then I go back to being calm and then back and forth. And then right before the match, I'm like, calm. Okay, let's go. Let's go. There's nothing, you just have to wrestle. Let's go. So that's kind of how my recent world championships was, before every match. And it's fun. I enjoy it even though it's stressful.
I think that's very mature, like understanding and addressing your emotions, feelings, whatever you want to call it, your feelings, your emotions before a match. And you said that's how you were maybe before these recent championships. And you mentioned, I think, before the cadets, you see the elevated stage and you're nervous. And I don't think you said freaked out, but maybe that's kind of what I took from it, is like maybe overwhelmed. Is that something that over time, I don't even know if they're exercises. You said a few times a day, you do think about the movements and the feelings and the nerves and the emotions. Is that something that you just thoughts are in your head, or something you try to manage through mental training, I guess, for a lack of better words?
I feel like it is something that I like to manage. Just in life, I feel like I'm pretty good at blocking out thoughts, which might not be a good thing. But sometimes I'm like, okay, right now you're gonna think about it, and you're gonna. There's a word in Colorado Springs in the Olympic Training Center. There we had sports psychologists talk to us about it. But it's almost like envisioning the match and kind of like thinking through it in your head, just taking a few minutes of your day to kind of like lay down and just envision everything in the match. And I feel like that's a really helpful thing that I like to do. And sometimes I actually have dreams where I'm wrestling, and that's like even better because like I feel like I can practice the moves in my sleep. But it's yeah, it's cool.
Dreams are funny, right? Sometimes you wake up and you remember everything, and then 5 minutes later you're like, wait, what? What was I just dreaming about?
I know.
Do you ever do you learn from your dreams? And I know dreams are weird, so maybe that's a weird question, but do you ever like get better from sleeping and dreaming?
I think I'm just practicing the same things that I do in practice in my dreams. And sometimes it goes really wrong and it's like I just get like thrown or I get like taken down like crazy. And then I'm like, okay, okay. And I kind of know I'm dreaming when I'm sleeping. And I'm like, okay, now you're coming back. You're not gonna lose. You've got this. And then somehow I find it. I find a move or something. And sometimes it can go really bad in my dreams. Like sometimes I get like injured or something, but then other times I win everything and I'm like, whoa, this is so cool. Um, and yeah, I don't know why, but I have these dreams. Yeah.
Are these dreams like a regular occurrence, like weekly, month, and maybe it's sporadic, and maybe it's hard to say because again, dreams are weird. But is this something that happens on a somewhat regular basis, and that you remember?
Yeah, I do remember pretty well. I think I tend to have them more before a big competition like Senior Worlds. I
Yeah,
definitely had quite a few dreams. But I think normally just a few times a month. Uh
that's pretty
like
cool.
not maybe every other week kind of thing. Um but yeah, I love sleeping. I it's a funny topic. It's a funny topic, but I love sleeping and dreams are great, especially if you know you're dreaming, then it's not a problem. But yeah.
Wh- When did these dreams we're talking about start happening? Within the last year? Within the last 4 years? Or forever?
Uh I would I would say like last 4 years. No, yeah, last 4 years. I
Wow.
still remember having them before my first kid at Worlds also. So it's kind of a common thing for me. I don't know. I hope it's a common thing for other wrestlers too. I feel like it might be, um, for sure. So
I feel like it's like some people are like, oh, 2 days we train, we technique in the morning and we wrestle hard in the afternoon. And like you're like 3 a days. You're like, well, morning practice, afternoon
no,
practice, and nighttime. You're like just an
yeah,
extra time to get better. I think that's awesome.
I don't mean to do it. It just happens.
Well, good for you. Uh, so tell me about your first. So you lost in the semis in 2019. Tell me about your first world title, and what you remember from that event, or from like winning and how it felt.
Yeah, so my first title was Cadet Worlds in 2021, and that was in Budapest, Hungary. And that was just unbelievable. I feel like I was more emotional there than I was in Senior Worlds because it was almost because after taking that loss in 2019 and then having to go through COVID and missing the World Championships in 2020, I felt like I really, really needed to redeem myself. I was just not being able to wrestle all during all of that time. And so when I went there and I made the finals, like I won my semifinal match, I was like, whoa, I already did better than last time. That's incredible. And I was like, okay, now you can't stop. Just one more match. You can't stop. And I remember I was so nervous before that match, like just like my heart was like beating so fast. And then afterwards, I was kind of shocked. But then when we went to that podium and they raised the American flag higher than the other flags, and they played the national anthem, I just got goosebumps like everywhere, and my eyes started tearing up, and I was just like, "Oh, this is the best feeling ever!" And I'll always remember my first world championships that I won. That was incredible.
Sure. You mentioned COVID, right? Everybody's got a COVID story of something. Like, we don't have to dive into like COVID, but how was your training? What was, how did things change in that period of a year, 2 years, whatever it was?
Yeah. So it was kind of complicated. It was the nice part is that a lot of my family was home. My brother was home with me, and he's a wrestler too. And so we got these pretty cheap mats from Costco, and we set them outside, kind of like on the concrete. And I would wrestle my brother every morning, and we would put a Zoom call on with Valentine and some of our other coaches from the RTC. And this would be like an hour and a half almost every weekday. And I would be wrestling my big 220-pound brother uh, every morning. And yeah, we did this for a few months, but it was good. My brother is a Greco wrestler, and so I we did a lot of upper body things, a lot of pummeling, and we would also my brother and I we did a lot of training together too. We would do like home workouts with water, and we ordered a Bulgarian bag and some exercise equipment because the gyms were closed.
Uh-huh.
Uh, we would go on runs together. So me and my brother, we were just like at it. We were training so hard together, and I got in pretty good shape during COVID, which is surprising. Um, but yeah, that was my COVID experience. And also in COVID, I did start doing more jujitsu because wrestling was really closed up. But jujitsu was more open. I'm not sure why. So I did do a lot of jujitsu during COVID also.
Sure. A couple questions on that. One, Valentine and maybe some of the RTC coaches are watching on Zoom. What, I'm sure they're not just watching and then they say bye at the end, right? Is there feedback, or what? How was that? Because that's a really interesting way to to have practice and have a coach like observe and maybe give feedback.
Yeah, that was really tough because I sometimes they couldn't see really well what I was doing, or I couldn't see what they were doing, but they would literally get up in front of the camera and show me the movements that I'm supposed to do. And then my brother would tell me if it feels right or feels wrong, and I would just keep trying it. But I never really knew if what I was doing was 100% correct because, they're not there in person. But it was actually I was surprised how much we were able to get done. I learned a lot, I worked on a lot, and yeah, it was a good idea, and we even had once or twice a few international coaches that Valentine knows. They hopped on the call too, and they watched us, and that was really cool because I got coaching from another international coach because of Zoom, so that was fun.
So the innovation that was bred because of we're forced to, right? You can't go see these people, and yeah, what a weird time it was, but really what a you guys took advantage of it, and maybe it wasn't ideal, it could have been better, but you really made the most of it, and I think that's awesome. The next question is jujitsu. You did judo from, I don't know, 7 to 10 or something like that. Had you done jujitsu much prior to the pandemic? Well, yeah, we'll start with that. And
Yeah. So I started doing jujitsu when I was like 12 and a half. I had a coach invite me to a wrestling practice that was at this jujitsu gym called Gracie Fighter.
sure.
And then the head guy there, Caesar Gracie, he was watching our practice, and then after he was talking to me and my mom, and he was like, "Oh, Amit, you have to try jujitsu. You'll be so good at it. It's so fun." And then he was kind of joking, "Oh, there's a lot of money in jujitsu and this and that." And I was like, "I don't care about money, but
Right.
maybe I'll try it. And then I came in for a practice, and at first I was really confused. I was like, what is this? This is so weird. It had some similarities to wrestling and some similarities to judo, because in judo there's still guard, it's still in gis. And so it's kind of like wrestling and judo combined for me. So I immediately fell in love with it because it was like my two favorite sports combined.
Yeah.
Uh, and so and I also really enjoyed just the atmosphere in jiu-jitsu. I feel like it's a lot different than wrestling. There's kind of like this calm, like relaxed vibe. Like you can come in, you don't need to train really hard. You can kind of, even when you're, doing a live go, you can kind of like relax, pull the person, kind of get a choke really slowly, kind of just lay down. And wrestling obviously it's way more intense. So I kind of get like two different sides. I get something that's more relaxing and fun, and then I have wrestling that's like intense. I mean, jiu-jitsu can be intense too,
Sure.
but I feel like more so it can be relaxing if you want it to be.
Have you ever competed in jujitsu?
Yeah. So around that time when I first started, I was competing a lot for about 2 years, from like 12 to 14. And then at 14, that's when I went to New York with Valentine. But during that time, I did a lot of jiu-jitsu competitions, local ones in California. And I started as a white belt. I won my first competition, and this was in the adult division because I was big enough. So I went in the white belt adult division. And in jiu-jitsu, there's also this absolute division. So after you win your division, then all the winners can go in a bracket like later in the day, and then they can face each other. So in my first competition, I got like two medals, one for my division, one for absolute, and it was super cool. And I kept going. And if you're under 16 in jiu-jitsu, you have to go through the colored belts. But if you're over 16, it just goes white, blue, purple, brown, black.
Yeah.
So I got my yellow belt a little bit afterwards. Kept competing, got my orange belt. And I believe when I was an orange belt, my instructor said that I can go to a competition as a blue belt adult. And so I started competing as a blue belt adult. And I did that for a little bit, and it was a blast. Like these competitions were intense. But then after I got invited to New York, I was like, no, wrestling is my number one priority. And then I didn't really get a chance to compete more in jiu-jitsu until COVID.
Sure. Man, between 4 years old going on the mat, and then at 7 doing judo, back to wrestling and jujitsu, and competing against adults when you're a kid, and up through the world, you just like, some people would burn out. Like they would be like, I'm not having fun. This is too serious or too intense or too. Have you ever felt that, or have you ever had to back off and take a break? Or are you just like, I love it, give me more?
I think every time I have felt burnt out before, but I think because I have so many different sports, whenever I feel kind of like burnt out a little bit, I'll be like, okay, today I'm gonna go to jujitsu practice. I'm not gonna wrestle today. I'll do some jujitsu. And I felt like I feel like that has helped me manage it. And I
Yeah.
love everything. I love old three of those sports so much that
Yeah.
jumping from one to another has really helped me with that. I also really enjoy weightlifting and just exercise in general. I'm like addicted to exercise.
That's awesome.
So just, going on a run, lifting, things like that. Just having all of these different physical activities uh, keeps it exciting.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. Uh Olympic trials 2021. You wanted to go. Wait, one day? Your age is off by one day. Is that right? What's your birthday? What's the cutoff?
Okay, so my birthday is January 1st, 2004, and the cutoff is December 31st, if I believe. So if I was born literally like a few hours before, I could have tried to go to the Olympic trials. But that's the rule, and that's what it is. So uh I got a lot of good training in, and it was fun.
Okay. Fast forward to this year, 2022. Even back to the Final X and prior, like I'm sure your goal was to make the team and eventually win. It's one thing to have a goal. It's a whole other thing to believe it, right? I want to X. Okay, but do you really believe it, right? I don't know. there's a difference, right? So where were you at heading into your first senior level experience between wanting to make the team and wanting to win and believing you could, or maybe the third thing is believing you would, because there's maybe even two or three differences there.
Yeah, I think going into it, I believe that I could, that I could, I had the possibility, but I feel like in the back of my mind, I was like, I really don't know. I really don't know until that whistle blows and I shake her hand, and and then I just go into autopilot and I wrestle, and then at the end it's like, okay, you won. But I didn't believe in it. No, I just said, I told myself, just go out there and wrestle and see your result. Do what you do in practice, and if that works, it works.
You also said something really interesting right there. I'd shake your hand and then just go into autopilot, right?
Yes.
Are you, and I guess that's probably how you would describe it. Do you think during wrestling, or is it just like, a computer that's running off of what it's seeing and how it knows to react? And secondly, after the match, can you remember? Some people are like, I don't know what happened. I black out when I wrestle. And some people can remember everything. I saw her turn her toes, so I shot. And some people know all the details, and some people don't. And I guess it's two or three questions. But first of all, do you think when you wrestle?
I do think, but it happens only at certain times. There's times of the match that I'm not thinking at all. It's just pure reflexes. And then there's times that I'm thinking. I'm like, okay, I look at the clock, I look at the score, and then I kind of think about it, and then I change my wrestling for it. But then I shift very quickly out of thinking to wrestling, like within seconds. And then to answer your other question, after matches, I would say like 90% of the time I don't remember exactly what happened. I can remember what I did to score generally, but sometimes when I rewatch my matches after, I'm really surprised. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that I did that. I forgot that I did that. And so it's like it's the weirdest it's the weirdest thing ever.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. And Nico, I'm talking to our producer. If you got that match, if you could pull it up, that one I sent you, we'd love to check this out. This is your finals match, and we'll just kind of let it play here. I think it starts 10, 15 seconds in, but it's still 0-0. And you can walk us through what you're thinking. You can do play by play. We can just watch. But yeah, this is the finals. Did you know much about your opponent coming into it?
Yes, I watched many of her matches before, and she has this amazing double leg that she was getting on everybody. And what's amazing about it is she would take a relatively bad shot, like with her head down, but then she would drive into her opponent and be able to pick them up and throw them to their back somehow from that position. And so, leading up to the World Championships, I worked with my partner, and I would constantly have her shoot a double on me and try to drive me out and build up. And I
Uh-huh.
would work on sprawling and stopping her momentum. And so, I was really prepared for her to take that shot.
And she did.
Um, and she did. And at first, I remember for like a split second, I was like, oh wow, this is strong. And I was like, no, 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 you've got this. Just keep it. You've got this. And then I was able to go behind. And then from then on, I really don't remember anything. It was just that leg lace was reflexes completely.
It was.
And then right
Okay.
here, I was in complete shock. I mean, right now, even right now, a few days later, I still don't understand what happened. I don't know how I got that leg lace, but because that girl, she's strong. She's, Asian world champion, world silver medalist. Can't believe it.
Yeah. Do you remember? I mean, you remember standing on the mat right here? How you felt?
Yeah. I don't remember a lot actually. I was just like it was all just crazy. Like my senses were heightened. Like and these reactions, like, oh my gosh, they were just so natural. Like I couldn't. And this right here, when I'm picking up my that was not planned actually. I don't know. I wasn't even thinking about it before the match. I just suddenly decided that that's what I want to do. Because I have seen it before. I've seen a girl from Japan a long time ago do that. And I just in my head I was like, oh, that's something that you can do if you want. um,
That's
but
so
right here,
awesome.
Oh my gosh. Valentine's weight was moving forward and backwards. And I was like, please, please don't fall. Please don't drop him. Because just imagine right here, if he fell on his face, that would be so funny.
Oh, well, maybe, just maybe, you did these drills on the sand where you fall forward and catch yourself for it. Maybe it wasn't. It was for this. It was for this moment. So when
Oh
he's
my
on your shoulders afterwards,
That's hilarious.
uh,
But yeah,
yeah,
I was really enjoying my moment because the first time I ran with the flag in Cadet Worlds in 2021, I just did like one circle and I was really shy and embarrassed. And I was like, please, I just want to get off. This is embarrassing. And then after I was like, no, you have worked so hard for this. You are a world champion. You should enjoy every second of it. And I feel like that's what I did at seniors.
were you? I'm sure that's not something that crossed your mind here, but I brought it up, and I'm sure plenty of people brought it up. The youngest ever, like, at what point did that dawn on you, or did somebody say it to you, and you were like, "Oh wow, cool."
uh Somebody said it to me after and I was like what, because I thought that Kyle Snyder was 18 when he won, so I
He
was
was
like, oh
19,
no
yeah.
no it's yeah but I was like, oh, it's a normal thing, I didn't think that I was the youngest. I thought there's most people, like most of the best have made world teams at 18 and have won at 18, so I was just really surprised. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm the youngest now. And that just added an extra element of joy for me,
Yeah,
being youngest.
that's so awesome. Congratulations to that. And I don't even know if I want to go there, but Jordan just won 7. That's the record. I mean, you're 18. He didn't win his first till he's like 23 or 24, maybe. Is that even something that's crossed your mind or dawned on you? Like, maybe before I retire, 8's possible.
Oh, I don't know, because going into this world championships, I did not think, I knew that I had a shot at it, but I didn't think that I would win. Like I don't know why, but I just thought that something would happen, and
Yeah.
somehow I won. And so to think of winning again is just like, uh, I mean, it's crazy. Like, I don't know. I guess I'm gonna go by it every single year, and
Yeah.
just every year is a new year. Every competition is its own thing, and even within the competition, it's just one match at a time. I don't think ahead like I do, but I try to focus on what I'm doing in the present, and I feel like that helps me.
Yeah, well, and I think that's the best way to do it. I had to ask because that's my job. And best of luck to you on smashing that eventually, right? But one match, one competition at a time is definitely the right way. But here I go contradicting myself because I'm going to talk about 2 years from now. 2024, I'm sure you're aware of this, right? 72 is not an Olympic weight, so up or down, is that something I'm sure you've given a little bit of thought to it. I don't know that you've committed in your mind to going up or down, but where are you at with that, 2 years out?
Yeah, I'm really thinking about it, and I feel like at this next season, I want to decide if I want to go up or down.
Hmm.
But it's hard for me because I want to try to listen to my body and stick to a weight that I feel the best at.
Yeah.
And I thought that that weight was 68, but then this past year I gained weight, and I was like, I don't know what's wrong with me. Maybe I'm just growing. And I was like, 76 is too big for me, but 68, I don't want to cut weight right now. Like, and so I just kind of found my way to 72, and right now at 72, I don't need to cut weight. I'm right there. So I eat a little bit healthier like the day before, and I make weight. So thinking that way, maybe 68, but at the same time I could grow muscle and go 76. So I have to think about it, but definitely I want to decide soon to get ready for the Olympics.
Sure.
Um, so I guess it's just how my body feels.
Yeah.
If I'm really suffering cutting weight, then maybe I'll just try to grow some muscle. We'll see.
Sure. Well, and you said, what was wrong? Nothing was wrong with you, right? And what? You're just growing, right? You're 18. You're probably still growing. Um, and I think you just gave yourself the best advice, right? Listen to your body. And I've heard a lot of successful wrestlers talk about that. And some are like, at the end of their careers, like, I wish I would have listened to it more during my career. And instead I was trying to force one way or the other. So you got plenty of time. You got a great head on your shoulders, and no doubt you're gonna do great. You're gonna do great wherever you go. Okay, back to jujitsu because we were just talking off before this. ADCC's just happened. You're not the only person who's successful in your life. Let's talk about
Yeah.
that.
Oh, okay. So my boyfriend is also the youngest ever IBJJF world champion. So it's incredible this year what we've done. Youngest senior world champion in wrestling for the US
Mm-hmm.
and youngest ever IBJJF jiu-jitsu champion. And I just feel like our energy, like we feed it off of each other. When he does great, I feel like, wow, I can do something. I can accomplish that too. And I feel like it works the other way around. But he's just he's amazing. He's my best friend, and I just my training is so amazing when I'm with him. I feel like I just love to wrestle him. He teaches me jujitsu. I try to teach him wrestling. It's really cool.
How's his wrestling?
I think it's good. Yeah, it's different though. It's different than anything I've felt with wrestlers. He moves so differently. Like jiu-jitsu, generally people in jiu-jitsu in general, they wrestle very differently. I think it's because of the guard and because of the guillotine, like if you take a shot head first. Um and his reflexes in general are not like anything I've ever seen. Like when I shoot on him, like he just does crazy scrambling, crazy flips. It's insane.
Do you
Yeah.
feel like wrestling with jujitsu practitioners for that reason is so different? It's so weird. I guess would be a word for foreign, unique. Do you feel like wrestling with him or any jujitsu people can help your wrestling because you get that different feel?
I think it can be beneficial. But I feel like the best thing is actually doing jujitsu with them
Okay.
because the scrambles that happen in jujitsu, like when you're trying to pass somebody's guard or somebody is in side control, like it almost looks like they're pinning you,
Yep.
and you have to get out of that position. Uh, is I feel like there's just so much core strength and flexibility that it adds a really unique skill set for my wrestling and just scrambling in general. It really relates to wrestling so well.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, do you watch jujitsu? I know you were at Worlds and ADCC was going on all the time, and it's a big deal. So that might be difficult. But are you like a fan? Do you follow it to some degree?
Yeah, I would say I'm a fan. I'm still pretty new to jiu-jitsu, but
Yeah.
I love watching it. It's so exciting. It's so different than wrestling because you watch it and sometimes it looks like it's kind of slow, like oh people are just like holding on to each other, but there's so much that's happening that you
Yeah.
can't see it. And I only understood that after I had a very tough jiu-jitsu competition. They are working every second out there to control the position and work very slowly to the submission. You know, every little inch that you move just a little further makes a huge difference. And I that's so different from wrestling. Just how you can like take your time in jujitsu and kind of slowly get in on the position.
Yeah, like inch your way. Yeah, I felt it. It is different in that regard. Um, well, great. We got Kyle Klingman, who's been sitting here very patiently, hanging out, taking some notes probably. But Kyle has a little game we like to play with our guests, and I'm gonna let him take it over.
Okay. Oh, I'm ready.
Like that sigh.
Oh, Tel Aviv. No. Oh, I think it's yeah, Tel Aviv. Oh, yes.
Where'd you look it up?
Oh no, maybe it's Jerusalem. I just assumed that
Capital
it
of
was Tel
Israel,
Aviv because that's where the
Jerusalem.
oh, it is Jerusalem. Oh, I assumed it was Tel Aviv because that's where the airport was. It's like, but you know what? Jerusalem. Okay. Was that Trisha Saunders? N Yes? Okay. Whew.
I think you're making her
I was
sweat, Kyle.
doubting myself there. Oh, Dawn Parrish. Yeah, she's amazing.
Yes, she crushed it.
Texas? Is it, I know he grew up, I know he
Close.
lived there for a long time. Oh, that's a tough. I'm sorry, I don't know. Oh, yes, yes, yeah,
It's a different era.
yeah.
What? You got some
Oh,
bangers today.
wait. Kav McGrath or Kav McGrath? Kav
Woo!
McGrath. Yeah, Kav McGrath. It was in the very back of my brain. Yeah,
Bonus
it's
question. Where is Valentin Kalika from?
Ukraine.
There we
Yay.
go. There we go. Crushed it. Um, okay, one last little game. This one's called Wins and Whoopins. So if you can think back over
Okay.
the span of your career, and maybe I'm looking for one win that stands out in your mind as memorable. Maybe it was the last one you just wrestled. Maybe it's a different one for any reason. It could be little kids match. It could be jujitsu or judo. Really, I don't care. And then one like just whooping. Everybody's got at least one time they just got smashed and it sucked and
Uh,
it sticks out in their memory and they don't want to talk about it, but I bring it up and make people talk about it. But looking for one win and one whooping that stand out to you from any time from the time you were 4 till your last most recent match.
I think the win that really standed out for me recently was my quarterfinals match in the World Championships against Turkey because I really shocked myself. The first 30 seconds of this match, this girl felt extremely strong. I went into it feeling like this was gonna go the full 6 minutes. It might be very close. And then just my reflexes kicked in somehow, and I got a throw and I got a pin. And when I got that pin, I looked down and I was like, did this just happen? Like my mind was blown. And it wasn't like, it wasn't one of those close matches where you come back, but just emotionally, I had goosebumps everywhere. I was like, whew. And after that, I was like, you know what? Maybe I can win this thing. If I just pin this girl and she is amazing, then maybe I have the potential to win this thing. That's how I felt after that match.
That's awesome.
And then what was the word you used for the losses?
Whooping, but you can use whatever word you want.
Okay. I think the biggest whooping I had, I think I was like 11, 11, 10 or 11, and I went to the boys Tulsa Nationals in Oklahoma. Or
Yep.
no, wait, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Yeah,
Yeah, you
in
got it.
Tulsa. And I was in the plus weight class because my mom and me, we don't believe in cutting weight, and I was
Love it.
about 5 pounds over naturally. I think I was 145 and it was 140 plus. And so in this division, I had boys that were like 160, 170, 180. And I got my butt whooped. I got pins. I still I think I won one match, so that's why I had a few more and I wasn't just dropped from the bracket.
Right.
But these were the only times that I have ever gotten pinned in competition, and I still remember it because I felt so I felt like nothing I did worked. I tried so hard, and I just kept getting pinned, and I just felt so terrible.
Yeah.
So imagine, yeah. So I
It
definitely remember that.
sure. Yeah. Well, and it's like you said early on in this interview, like the losses are nobody likes them, but they're good and they're important, and you could take a lot from them. Um, Fortunately for you, you don't lose a lot, but you still obviously are growing and advancing at a great rate. So, um, Man, shoot, we're coming up on an hour now. We're down to the line, and that's pretty much going to do it for today's show. But I really do appreciate you coming on. It's always insightful hearing the journey from the time you got in till winning your first world title, and hopefully first of many. We're gonna leave you with the final word, though. Anything you might want to say about anything before we let you move on with your day?
I mean, thank you for inviting me on the show, and it has been really great to speak with you.
Awesome. Well, me, thanks so much. Have a great day, and we look forward to continuing to watch your career unfold. Thanks. Bye-bye. All right, Kyle. Dude, she's a killer. Stone cold killer. It was really fun having her on today. I think we're just scratching the surface. So really excited to watch her continue, hopefully to have success and be awesome. She's a great person, and we're glad she came on. And that's going to do it for today's show. So for Kyle Klingman, I'm Mark Beta. We'll see you next time. Thanks.